next, we're talking about snakes. Dozens of snakes were released into the wild,
controlling the python population here in Florida.
Tool is being unleashed in Florida's Everglades to hunt Burmese python.
Researchers have developed robot rabbits.
Florida is currently fighting a war, and it is losing. The Everglades are being eaten alive by a predator that does not belong there, the Burmese python. After hunters, traps, and even tracking dogs failed to stop them, the state tried something desperate. They deployed a secret army of high-tech robotic rabbits. It sounds like a joke, but what happened next was a total disaster that cost millions. But here is the catch. Inside that disaster was a hidden secret, a data point that the engineers almost missed, which accidentally revealed the only way to finally stop the invasion. The unstoppable invaders rise. Florida's Everglades are vanishing, not by land development or climate change alone, but because they are being swallowed whole. The culprit is a beast that evolved in the steamy jungles of Southeast Asia, a predator designed by millions of years of evolution to be the perfect eating machine, the Burmese python. But the thing nobody tells you is that this biological disaster was not an act of nature. It was a human mistake. It started in the 1980s and 90s. The exotic pet trade was booming, and baby pythons were the hot new item. They were sold as harmless curiosities, glossy, beautifully patterned, and small enough to rest in a child's hands. People bought them by the thousands, completely ignoring the fact that these were not hamsters. They were monsters in waiting.
These things will take out a deer. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Within a few short years, those cute little pets morphed into 15 to 20-foot giants, powerful enough to crush the life out of a full-grown deer or even a 6-foot alligator. When owners realized they had a literal dinosaur living in their guest room, they did the irresponsible thing. They released them into the canals and swamps. But the real tipping point came in 1992. Hurricane Andrew, a Category 5 storm, tore through South Florida like a buzzsaw. The storm flattened everything in its path, including a massive reptile breeding facility. In a single night, an unknown number of pythons were liberated into the wild. Those escapees seeded a population that would eventually engulf the entire ecosystem. For a python, the Everglades was not just a new home, it was a paradise. It offered endless warmth, infinite water, and most importantly, prey that had never seen a giant constrictor before. The local wildlife, raccoons, possums, marsh rabbits, didn't have the evolutionary fear to run away. They were sitting ducks, and with no natural predators to stop them, the snakes did what they do best. They multiplied. A single female can lay up to 100 eggs at a time. Just think about that math for a second. One snake becomes 100 in a single season. The devastation is hard to wrap your head around. Biologists estimate that there are now tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of these things roaming South Florida. In areas where the pythons have taken over, the mammals have vanished. Raccoons, possums, and bobcats have seen their populations drop by over 90%.
How stupid do you have to be to have released these things into the house?
The silence in these parts of the swamp is deafening. It is a ghost town, and the snakes are getting bolder. One massive python was found with an entire adult deer inside its stomach. In another viral incident, a python was filmed locked in a death match with an alligator, a battle so intense that the snake actually exploded trying to digest its rival. The state knew they had to do something, so they tried everything. They launched the Python Challenge, a massive media event inviting the public to hunt snakes for cash. It was chaos. People showed up with machetes and airboats, looking for glory. But after weeks of hunting, they only caught 68 snakes. 68. That is a drop in the ocean. They tried professional hunters, paying bounties for every foot of snake removed, but it costs millions to pay people to wander the swamp at night. And for every snake they bagged, 2 more hatched. They were losing the war, and they knew it. They needed a new strategy, one that didn't rely on human eyes, the nose that knows the enemy. The flaw in every previous plan was simple. Humans are blind in the swamp. The sawgrass is thick, the water is murky, and pythons are masters of camouflage. You could step on one and never know it was there until it was too late. Wildlife managers realized they needed a hunter that didn't use its eyes. They needed a hunter that used its nose. So, Florida turned to an ally as old as humanity itself. Enter the python dogs. the state launched a bold experiment with 2 elite canines, Truman, a black Labrador with a friendly face, and Eleanor, a Dutch Shepherd bred for high-intensity work. These weren't your average house pets. They were trained like bomb-sniffing dogs, but instead of explosives, they were hunting the faint, musky odor of a Burmese python. It is a smell humans can't detect, but to a dog, it lingers in the grass like a neon sign. When they hit the field, the difference was night and day. A human hunter could walk past a snake 5 feet away and miss it. But Truman and Eleanor, they were surgical. Truman's tail would stiffen, Eleanor would circle with her nose low, and then freeze. That was the signal. Handlers would rush in, pull back the grass, and there it would be, the glistening scales of a massive predator. These dogs were finding snakes in minutes, where humans had searched for hours. It seemed like the perfect solution. But here is the deal. The Everglades is 1.5 million acres of hellish terrain. The heat is unbearable, often topping 100 degrees Fahrenheit with humidity that feels like a wet blanket. The dogs had to wear cooling vests and special boots to keep the razor-sharp sawgrass from slicing their paws to ribbons.
Decline mainly due to habitat destruction.
And the danger wasn't just the heat. The swamp is full of things that want to hurt a dog. Venomous cottonmouths, scorpions, and of course, the alligators. While Truman and Eleanor were effective, the logistics were a nightmare. To cover the entire Everglades, you would need hundreds of dog teams. The cost of training, feeding, protecting, and transporting that many specialized dogs was astronomical. It simply wasn't scalable. The state realized that while biology was helpful, it wasn't enough to turn the tide. They needed something that didn't get tired, didn't overheat, and didn't need to be fed. They needed a machine. And that is when things got really weird. The rise of the robo-rabbit. With the dog program hitting a ceiling and live bait trials shut down due to animal cruelty concerns, the engineers had a crazy idea. If they couldn't use a live rabbit to lure the snakes, they would build one. This wasn't a toy you buy at a superstore. This was a piece of advanced military-grade engineering. They called it the robo-rabbit. Each unit was a masterpiece of deception. The engineers studied what makes a python strike. It is not just visual, it is heat and smell. So they built a decoy encased in synthetic fur and weather-resistant materials. Inside, they installed a thermal heating pad calibrated to exactly 99 degrees Fahrenheit, the precise body temperature of a living marsh rabbit. To a python looking through its heat-sensing pits, this robot glowed like a hot meal in a cold room. But they didn't stop there. They added tiny emitters that released a synthetic chemical compound, mimicking rabbit musk. Some models even had small motors to make the ears twitch and the nose wiggle. It was the perfect trap. Hidden inside the chassis was a motion-triggered camera and a transmitter. The moment anything grabbed the rabbit, an alert would beam to a satellite, pinging a biologist's phone miles away. The plan was elegant. Set the trap, wait for the snake to wrap around the robot, and then send a team to collect the python. They built 120 of these units, each costing nearly $4,000. That is almost $500,000 in robotic bunnies scattered across the swamp. They placed them in fenced pens in known python hotspots and waited. The first 48 hours were electric. The alerts started coming in. The cameras captured massive 15-foot pythons slithering toward the bait, flicking their tongues, completely fooled by the heat and the smell. They struck, coiling around the robots. The capture teams moved in. It was working. And then, day 3 happened. An alert pinged from a deep water sector. The biologist opened the feed, expecting to see a python. Instead, the screen was filled with a dark, armored shape moving with terrifying speed. It was a 12-foot alligator. The gator didn't care that the rabbit wasn't real. It saw heat, it smelled prey, and it attacked. In a violent explosion of water and mud, the alligator crushed the $4,000 robot in a single bite, snapping the electronics like twigs. Basically, everyone forgot one crucial detail. Pythons aren't the only ones looking for a free meal.
We found 2 hatchling eastern indigo snakes that were produced by animals that we released there on site.
The engineers had inadvertently created the perfect lure for everything in the swamp. The alligators, realizing these rabbits were easy targets, started hunting the robots. They smashed dozens of them. The pythons, sensing the presence of the massive gators, started avoiding the traps entirely. The project was falling apart. The expensive robots were being eaten by the wrong animals, and the snakes were getting away. It looked like a total, humiliating failure. Decoding the swamp's secrets. The project was on the brink of being scrapped. Critics were calling it a waste of taxpayer money. But while the executives were panicking, a data analyst on the team started looking closer at the wreckage. The robots that survived, and even the ones that were destroyed, had been doing something else the whole time. They weren't just bait, they were spies. Every second those robots were out there, their sensors were logging data. They recorded temperature, humidity, time of day, and most importantly, movement. The cameras had captured thousands of hours of footage of what was happening in the swamp when humans weren't around. The analyst fed all this raw data into a machine learning AI, hoping to salvage something from the mess. What the AI found was shocking. It didn't just show where the snakes were, it showed how they moved. The data revealed a ghost map. It turned out the pythons weren't wandering randomly. They were using specific hidden highways through the sawgrass and water channels. And the craziest part? The AI discovered that the pythons were moving on a strict schedule to avoid the alligators. The robot's failure was actually the key. By analyzing where the alligators destroyed the robots and where the pythons avoided them, the AI deduced the pythons' fear patterns. The snakes knew exactly where the gators hunted and navigated around them. The pythons had a secret social calendar, moving through safe zones at specific times of the night to breed and hunt. The robotic rabbits hadn't just found a few snakes, they had accidentally mapped the entire infrastructure of the invasion. It is like finding a secret map of the enemy's tunnels during a war. The humans had been trying to fight the snakes one by one. The snakes were playing a game of chess. Now, thanks to the destroyed robots, the humans finally could see the board, the final reckoning. Armed with this AI-generated ghost map, the strategy changed overnight. They stopped waiting for the snakes to come to the bait. Instead, they went to the snakes. The hunters loaded the coordinates into their GPS units and headed into the deepest, most inaccessible parts of the swamp, places they had never bothered to check before because they looked empty. But they weren't empty. Following the AI's guidance, the teams located the safe zones the pythons were using. And what they found there was the stuff of nightmares. They didn't find solitary snakes, they found the breeding aggregations. These were the hidden bunkers where the massive reproductive females were laying their eggs, safe from the alligators. The numbers were staggering. In just 1 month, using the new map, hunters removed more invasive pythons than they had in the entire previous year. They were pulling out massive 18-foot matriarchs, effectively preventing thousands of future snakes from ever hatching. They raided nest after nest. It was a surgical strike on the population's ability to reproduce. So, here is the deal. The robotic rabbits were a catastrophic failure as bait. They were expensive, fragile, and got eaten by the wrong animals. But as intelligence-gathering tools, they were a brilliant success. That $4,000 price tag per rabbit suddenly seemed cheap compared to the breakthrough they provided. The war isn't over. The Everglades is vast, and the pythons are resilient. But for the first time in decades, the humans have the upper hand. They aren't just swinging machetes in the dark anymore. They are fighting with data. It proves that sometimes you have to fail spectacularly to learn the one thing that actually matters. The robots died so the Everglades could have a fighting chance. But it does make you wonder, if the snakes were smart enough to navigate around the alligators, how long will it take them to figure out our new strategy? Did we win a battle, or did we just teach them how to hide even better? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Do you think technology can save nature, or are we just making it worse? If you enjoyed this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible documentaries.